At precisely 8:17 p.m., I was dragged off my own sidewalk by three people in matching windbreakers and reflective vests, chanting, "Curfew means curfew," over and over like some kind of demented mantra. One of them had a headlamp strapped to their forehead that kept blinding me every time I tried to look at their face. Another carried a walkie-talkie labeled Community Order Task Force in bold letters across the front. I ducked under someone's grabbing arms, threw one attacker into a lilac bush with a satisfying crunch of branches, and somehow managed to dial 911 with my nose while being choked by a lanyard that smelled like mothballs and disappointment. Minutes later, red and blue lights lit up Sycamore Point subdivision like a discount 4th of July, and all hell broke loose in the most suburban way possible. My name is Bryce Templeton, and I am a divorced, quiet guy who just likes to jog at night when the air is cool and the streets are empty. I moved to Sycamore Point 3 years ago for what the realtor called its peaceful energy and strong sense of community. What she failed to mention was that the neighborhood HOA was run like a micro-dictatorship by Bethany Creel, a retired school principal with a clipboard addiction and an unholy love of bylaws that bordered on the religious. Bethany had steel gray hair pulled back so tight it gave her a permanent look of surprise, and she wore cardigans in 90 degrees weather because professionals maintain standards regardless of climate. After a few noise complaints about my existence, including one for humming while mowing my lawn at 2 in the afternoon, Bethany introduced what she called the Twilight Quiet Ordinance at the monthly HOA meeting. The ordinance banned what she termed non-essential outdoor movement after 8 p.m. to preserve the nocturnal tranquility of our cherished community. Most people thought it was a joke when she presented it on a PowerPoint with animated stars and moon clip art. The 7 people who bothered to show up to that meeting chuckled politely and went home to forget about it. But Bethany was dead serious, and she had just enough votes from her cronies to pass it by a margin of 4-3. Within a week, laminated signs appeared on every corner announcing the new curfew in comics font. Because apparently even our oppression had to be aesthetically offensive, Bethany began enforcing the curfew with what she called the Neighborhood Order Committee, a group of overzealous retirees who had nothing better to do than patrol our streets with clipboards, tactical flashlights they bought on sale at the Army surplus store, and passive-aggressive slogans printed on neon safety vests. Harmony starts with compliance was their favorite, followed closely by a quiet night is a safe night. They took turns walking the neighborhood in pairs, documenting every perceived violation with the dedication of wildlife researchers studying an endangered species. One night, I stepped out to walk my dog at 8:04 p.m., exactly 4 minutes past the sacred deadline. My golden retriever Murphy needed to go, and I figured 4 minutes wouldn't matter to anyone with a functioning brain. The next morning, a citation appeared in my mailbox printed on official HOA letterhead that Bethany definitely ordered in bulk. First warning, curfew violation. It read in bold red letters, followed by 3 paragraphs of legalese about community standards and the importance of collective cooperation. The second offense came when I dared to wave at my neighbor while checking my mailbox at 8:10 p.m. the following Tuesday. Bethany herself witnessed this heinous crime from her kitchen window and wrote me up for what she called curfew flaunting with intent to normalize. I laughed when I read it, thinking surely this would blow over when people realized how insane it all was. But Bethany didn't just double down. She tripled down with the determination of someone who had finally found their life's purpose. When I decided to go for my regular jog at 8:17 p.m. on a Thursday evening in October, I had no idea I was about to become ground zero for the great Sycamore Point uprising. The air was perfect for running, crisp, but not cold, with just enough breeze to keep you cool. I had my earbuds in listening to a true crime podcast, ironically enough, when 3 figures emerged from behind the gardener's hedge like suburban ninjas. They wore matching navy windbreakers with no embroidered on the back and reflective thread, and their faces were twisted with the righteous fury of people who had been waiting their whole lives for this exact moment. The tallest one, a man named Gerald, who I recognized from the community garage sale, tried to grab my arm while shouting something about neighborhood preservation protocol. His breath smelled like tuna casserole and authority complex. The woman with a headlamp, whose name I later learned was Doris, attempted to restrain my other arm while reciting Section 5B of the bylaws from memory like some kind of suburban spell. The third enforcer, a younger guy named Trent, who was probably there because his mom made him, fumbled with what looked like zip ties while muttering, "This is for your own good," of authority being questioned. She marched straight up to Officer Wong with her master clipboard clutched to her chest, demanding to know why the police were interfering with sanctioned HOA security operations. Officer Wong's partner, a younger cop named Bradley James, was trying not to laugh as Bethany explained her curfew system with the passion of someone presenting a doctoral thesis. She pulled out laminated copies of the ordinance, meeting minutes she had notarized herself, and a color-coded map of the neighborhood showing violation hotspots. Gerald, still limping from my kick, tried to show them his official NOC badge, which turned out to be something Bethany had made at the local print shop using a template she found online. Doris kept interrupting to insist they had citizens' authority to enforce community standards while Trent quietly tried to extract rose thorns from his face. The real trouble started when Officer Wong asked Bethany if the HOA bylaws actually authorized physical enforcement of curfews. Bethy's face went through several shades of red as she flipped frantically through her papers, searching for the section that would vindicate her crusade. The other officer was running background checks on the computer in his patrol car, and his eyebrows kept rising higher with each result. Turns out Gerald had a record from 1998 involving a karaoke machine and a taser at a holiday party dispute. Doris had been banned from 3 different public libraries for aggressive shushing. Even Trent had a citation for disturbing the peace after starting a leaf blower at 5 a.m. on a Sunday. More police arrived, including a sergeant who looked like he had seen everything in his 20 years on the force, but was still somehow surprised by this. He listened to everyone's version of events with the patience of a saint, occasionally rubbing his temples like he was trying to ward off a headache. I showed him the citations I had received, the bruises forming on my arms from the attack, and the text messages from other neighbors complaining about Bethy's patrols. My neighbor Sandra even came out in her bathrobe to testify that she had been cited for letting her cat out after 8 p.m., which apparently violated the no non-essential animal movement subsection of the curfew ordinance. The sergeant made several phone calls, including one to the district attorney's office and another to someone he kept referring to as legal. After about 30 minutes of investigation, during which Bethany grew increasingly agitated, and Gerald kept insisting he was a duly appointed security agent, the sergeant delivered the news that would change Sycamore Point forever. Not only was the curfew ordinance completely illegal and unenforceable, but the HOA had zero authority to create physical enforcement teams or restrain residents. The assault charges were real. The unlawful detention charges were real. And the impersonating law enforcement charges were especially real given the badges and official vests. Bethy's meltdown was spectacular in its suburban intensity. She went from denial to anger to bargaining in about 30 seconds, insisting there must be some mistake, demanding to speak to the sergeant's supervisor, and finally offering to revise the ordinance to be more collaborative. But it was too late. The sergeant explained that assault was assault whether you did it wearing a windbreaker with an embroidered logo or not. The HOA's insurance company, when contacted by the police, immediately confirmed that vigilante behavior was not covered under their liability policy and that Bethany might be personally liable for any legal costs. The entire HOA board resigned within 48 hours of what neighbors started calling the 817 incident. Some resigned out of genuine shame at having enabled Bethy's power trip. Others because their lawyers advised them to distance themselves from the legal nightmare that was unfolding. The story made the local news, then regional news, and briefly went viral on social media with the hashtag Curfew trending for a solid week. Bethany, who was photographed in handcuffs trying to shout, "I was protecting the night" as she was escorted to the patrol car, became the face of HOA overreach nationwide. The neighborhood's response was swift and joyful. Someone organized a block party specifically scheduled to start at 8:01 p.m., complete with a countdown timer like it was New Year's Eve. People brought lights, speakers, and food, turning the same street where I had been attacked into a celebration of freedom. My neighbor Tom set up a karaoke machine, deliberately choosing it to honor Gerald's past indiscretions. Kids who had been forced inside by 8 p.m. 4 months ran around with glow sticks, finally free to be children after dark again. I was asked to join the new HOA board that would replace the old regime, but I politely declined, having had enough of neighborhood politics to last a lifetime. Instead, I donated money for a commemorative bench to be placed exactly where the attack happened. The plaque reads 8:17 p.m. Never forget in brass letters that catch the street light just right. People take photos with it now, and it has become an